Meeting.
I'll just throw out questions. Either one of you can answer, both of you can answer, neither one of you can answer, and I'll start crying. The important thing to remember is when we put the show together, you won't hear my voice. So we need to have complete answers. If I say, you know, what day is it today is.
Well, I think, yeah, no, we'll probably.
Okay, so let's start it.
I got it. No, we got it together.
You can put it in your back pocket, a connector.
Oh, there, we'll just pull around over here. We're good. I thought it was making me look a little goofy. Just a little goofy.
Okay.
I was just looking a little goofy.
Just a little bit.
Ready?
Okay. This is it.
This is my puppet Phil.
You got to tell. I got into.
Let's talk a little bit about the Blasters. How'd you guys get together?
I'll take that, John. The Blasters got together. We all grew up in a Downey. There was a large group of musicians on the east side of L.A. and you couldn't really come into Hollywood and be Hollywood stars because everybody knew you were from Downey, you know. So it's like, hey, get out of here, you're from Downey. That's why we purport this Downey thing. It's any town USA, though. Same problem if you're from Cleveland, right? So there was a pool that just we kept playing many bands. Johnny used to play drums in one band. The Blasters became a band.
Out of that pool, but the common denominator was the music that we played that created this pool, which was blues music, I think, right?
Yeah, rhythm and blues.
R&B.
And then everybody quit playing pretty much in the middle 70s because with the real onslaught of disco, you couldn't even fool your way into a gig. I mean, you used to be able to go and you could maybe play a B.B. King song, right? And then you could play Honey Don't, or something like that everybody knew. And they say, oh, these guys are great, let's get them a gig. And then they come in and make requests. And you say, no, we don't play that, no, we don't play that. But in disco, there wasn't any way in. I mean, there was like, what song you want to do, Brick House? Well, that's probably, I think I'll go back to school. So everybody went back to school, and then when the Sex Pistols came about, it showed that there was like life again, you know, the garage. The English were going to hand you back the energy that they had removed and maybe in the early 60s to some degree. So it's time to play again. So everybody got together. And,
You started just a second ago to mention this term garage band.
Yeah.
Are the Blasters a garage band? And what is a garage band?
well, no, the Blasters actually aren't a garage band. I mean, we were, given that much development goes on in the garage. And for those aspects of style that are garage bands that are good, most of what rock and roll through the late 50s and early 60s is certainly garage band stuff. The Blasters incorporated that, but we're much more trained musicians by the time. I mean, you know, T-Bone Walker and Big Joe Turner and Lowell Folsom and all these guys were our friends and taught us, because, you know, younger black kids were not as interested in the blues, and if you lived in Hollywood, you could play Gazaris. So what'd you have? You had white guys from Downey, you know, and Mexican guys, Los Lobos, people like that, who listened and preserved Jimmy Reed. But it's not just a preservation of an old song. It is a preservation of your language. It's like you can't forget what words mean. You know, you have to have them. And, so, yeah, that's what the Blasters are, and where it came about again.
I thought we were a garage band.
Well, we're a garage band with a fine hue, good tone.
What you mentioned some people in your last comment that were obviously important in your career. Can you talk some more about other people who were real important musical influences for you as a band?
Yeah, well,
Really?
certainly.
That's
Well,
my
I was
favorite,
waiting to see if Johnny was going to answer. That's all.
Well, there are groups like, you know, Chuck Berry's a big influence with the kind of music we play. It seems like you take a particular member and he has different influences. I know a lot of his influences are different than mine. I like to, when I play a bass line, I hear a lot of Chicago blues in my head, and that's what I try and pattern my lines after. And I know he'll go after a country blues sound, and he has favorite artists in that area.
But it's not. I don't think that you should make it like this guy plays. Everybody in the Blasters appreciates the full spectrum of music. As anybody who calls himself a musician in the American genre now, since they're not making up any new names. I mean, heavy metal is 20 years old, right? There ain't no new names. Kraftwerk and Stockhausen took care of electronic music. 20 years for you. It's done. Just play well. And in that, when you structure songs, certain parts of emotion, certain parts of rhythm are best transmitted, maybe by styles and not, I mean, inside the same song, there's maybe of a country blues kind. A lot of the guitar stuff you hear in rockabilly is from the 1910s, the 1920s, the black guys and the country guys that played then. There wasn't as much distinction between black and white music then because they didn't have pictures and all this promotion that happened later. And everybody went blackface. But everybody in the Blasters knows the vocabulary of American music. And that's kind of what it means. There's lots of blasters all around the world. You know, Thunderbirds. There's all kinds of bands that are the same thing who know what kinds of sounds emote which kinds of emotions. The Cramps are an important band, influential to the Blasters. Not even that we necessarily listen to the Cramps and say, "This I'm going to play just like the Cramps." It's that when the Cramps supported a sound that was one of the genres that we played in, and they played it in a modern context, like we try to play in a modern context. And the Cramps being closer to the sound that is generally accepted was a bridge and an influence. Hence, that's why the Blasters, that's how the Blasters and X, all of these things came about. And likewise, them from us. And that's the way that the music should be in general. And I think, and hopefully it can solve racism and all kinds of problems, because it's our only common language.
Exactly. Let's go back for just 1 second.
Can I breathe?
You're talking about country music a couple of minutes ago. What about Hank Williams? Was he any?
Very much influenced
Yeah?
me singing, yeah. And
Hank Williams was very much.
Absolutely, yeah. Hank Williams was a big influence to me singing. Also in the songs that David wrote are certainly structured a lot like Hank Williams songs. Hank Williams is one of the few guys that had the ability to write songs and sing them well. There's another guy called Jimmy Rogers, who is even earlier than that perhaps a lot of what some people will say, oh, that's a Hank Williams thing. It may not be. It's maybe Emmett Miller or Jimmy Rogers. And Hank Williams was studying off of the same guy. That's why you have to have that. See, Hank Williams didn't come out of a vacuum. You know when one day somebody came out, Lovesick Blues is Emmett Miller's song. I got a feeling called the blues, 1926 or something like that, with a black, or I'm not sure if it was a black or white band. I'm not exactly sure, but it was a jazz band. It wasn't called country music then. We called it country music after we accepted it. It's called it old-timey sometimes, but not that.
This show that we're doing.
Check, test. How's this doing?
Fine, take speed.
What are you looking at?
Bum, bum. He had to change the battery in this doohickey.
This
Sorry.
particular show that we're doing is all about American rock and roll.
Wait a minute.
What was that?
No, I thought we might have changed the catheter here.
How would you guys describe American rock and roll? What does that term mean to you?
Rock and roll. American music is what the Blasters call this, and rock and roll is probably a good catch-all as long as we understand that rock and roll it includes black, white, Spanish, and includes Bing Crosby, because there isn't really much difference between what American music sounded like before World War II, before in the 1800s even, and what it sounds like now, except for electricity that came in after the war. And if you listen before the war, and T-Bone Walker and people like that, it sounds the same Chuck Berry lick, as soon as you plug the electric guitar in. So rock and roll being a lot associated with electricity, say it's electric American music, and that's it. It could be pop music, it could be blues music, every one of those things, every one of those kinds of classifications has been a hit on rock and roll stations. So rock and roll, I mean, everything from I'm going to Houston, I mean, that was a hit. Dig it? Right next to Slim Harper going, come on, baby, scratch my back, right? Right next to the Beatles going, I want to hold your hand. This goes rock and roll. Now what's rock and roll? It's an unemployed drummer with his singer with a machine. His singer got a machine and gave him the boot.
Excuse me. You've talked a lot about the sound and the way the music sounds. What about the lyrics? How important are lyrics in defining music as really strong rock and roll, American rock and roll?
Lyrics are, I think, mostly important to the singer, because writers write about music and writers are writers. You will generally find writers writing about what's written, as opposed if somebody sang you your review, they'd sing to you more about the singer. Or if somebody played it on guitar, they'd play it on guitar. So you hear a lot about writing. I think it's most important to the singer, and I appreciate that. If the song really doesn't mean anything to me, I can muster emotions from you by not saying words. I can make sounds. I can whimper. I can show strength. It doesn't matter what the word is. A singer's job is to be able to lay emotions over that palette. And most people don't listen to words until very, very far into hearings of the song, many, many times in. Mostly what they're listening to is the template of the emotion over the melody and the rhythm that's in there. And as examples, if you wanted to read poetry inside of the hit songs of the modern world, I'm telling you, don't read them. In the case of the Blasters with Dave Alvin that wrote songs, Dave Alvin's the best poet, one of the best poets in the United States, in my opinion, as well as a great songwriter in melody. So that you got very, very good songwriting quality, and that allowed me, the singer, to, if I have to sing a thing 1,000 times, I can't say I want to rock you, baby, 1,000 times with any emotion. I can say it once in a while with some emotion. If the song doesn't have enough meat in its words to mean something to the person that's going to be intimately related to it, it's not good for me. It can make you hits, though. I know it can make you hits, but it does not mean anything to the live performance and the repetitive live performance and the life of that song in time and through time.
What are some of the things?
I'm sorry.
sorry,
Johnny can answer those. You should go first.
What are some of the things that Dave's writing about in his lyrics?
I don't know. David is not writing lyrics with me anymore.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, there is, and that
But mostly the themes are like of broken romances, I would think.
Well, yeah, broken
Aren't they?
romance. Well, there's the themes. The themes that the broken romances were the themes early in the Blasters, particularly because nobody wanted to be political in any more than our appearance, and so that the emotions and things, pent-upness and stuff like that, was not put out in a political way. And at the same time, it was supposed to be good time music, but no, I didn't want to say I'm going to rock and roll all night long and stuff. That's why American music, Marie Marie, is one of the most beautiful story ballads, and so we didn't touch on any political things. Not even so much political as socio-economic, because what the Blasters are trying to represent is that the music of America, the rock and roll American music that is liked and loved by all of you, is what we're trying to preserve and play, and it's not necessarily what's represented on the radio. And that's given examples. The reason I know how to play this stuff is because if you go to live gigs, people want to hear this. They don't want to hear this other thing. Somebody else controls this other side of that. We're here to preserve that, no matter how hard it is. It's not an easy job.
Why is it not easy?
Well, first of all, because people call success in rock and roll now, or in music, much different than it used to be called ever before. And it really didn't happen until the 50s, till this large money that came in from the collection of publishing through the radios and the collection of records. It used to be that musicians pretty much were their own single entities. They walked from place to place. They were the guys best known to be able to control vibrations in the air. And we sanctioned them. We said, this guy can really control vibrations in the air to move me. And so Beethoven, Bach, people like that, do you think these guys were rich men who lived in nice houses? Nada. They were poor men who didn't make money so much from music unless you traveled around. You get some job, you get a sponsor, a rich sponsor who would give you money to keep you alive. The guys in the 20s and the guys in the 30s were businessmen. Benny Goodman ran his band like a businessman. This was his entity, his strength. All of a sudden in the 50s, we started losing a great deal of that control, and we start skyrocketing certain individuals. Bing Crosby didn't become a rich guy because somebody skyrocketed him. He bought real estate and beat his head against the wall for 7 years to get out of a contract with Paul Whiteman, and he worked for what he had. Soon enough, there was enough of this additional ways to get money. Publishing was one. Publishing was always written on song sheets, and it had been written for 200 years, so they knew what that was. They didn't know what it was when they put it on records, though. People were playing on the radio. How do I get paid? They learned how to get paid in the late 30s, and they started getting paid in the 50s. They bought all of Carl Perkins's publishing and Bo Diddley's because they didn't know how they were going to get paid. They never got paid for it before. Now there's guys buying nice houses off of what Bo Diddley sweated his blood out, to get, but they're getting paid on his publishing. When that started happening, you start skyrocketing. You can edit this if you want. You skyrocket certain people into positions of huge magnitude. It is very disproportionate to the real way that you should play music. Music should be a reaction to your life. You should have a life other than music. And I think that most of the tendencies in the late 70s and the 80s is showing that. Bands like Journey and Van Halen weren't accepted by record companies and things in the 70s. They walked themselves across the United States and proved that they knew how to move the air the way that people wanted the air moved. Whether you want them, you like that or not, I'm coming, and they built it, and they're not going to be dogs because of it. They're their own men. They weren't built by somebody else.
What do you think? What do you think that video has done in relation to all of this? I mean, how hard is it, do you think, today for a new band to start out, because they have such an immediate form that's going into 24 million homes, and it seems to me like bands today don't have a chance to make mistakes anymore. What do you think?
Well, yeah. You got to answer something.
Okay, I don't know. I don't think it's that immediate, though. There is a big emphasis on the visual aspect of groups now, and just how those things are directed and how you end up looking. But you can get, even if you don't have a deal that includes video, I think you can get to that echelon and then work that out later. But I think it's overplayed right now. That's just how I feel.
I think it's very young, and I think we can compare the ways that video and music are overlapping now as probably what we look at early silent movies, and I'm not even talking about the 20s, I'm talking about like 1910, you know, it's kind of like... I think in its first jolt, it's ultimately going to be great for music. The first effect of it has been to seed for a while, but now there isn't enough channels. You're one channel. You know how easy it is if I made my video, how easy it is for me to get it on your channel and for you to play it in full rotation. Ain't so easy. It's not a free marketplace. It's not, it's not quite a free enterprise system. So it's saturated. As soon as there was enough bands, more bands making videos than you had slots, because there weren't for a while, there was no bands. You needed them things. Now you don't need them things, do you? You don't need them videos, do you? But some other guys need them. There's a whole lot of channels opening up for videos. All right? Videos cost a lot of money, so young bands don't actually get to make ones, except that there's a lot of surplus video technicians. There used to be more of them. They're all employed now. In the late 70s, you couldn't do anything except come home with a pocket full of video cards. Now they actually cost to make. They used to be free. I'll make your video. Yeah, I got a camera. I'll make it for nothing. But I think that ultimately they're opening up all of the channels, and music doesn't necessarily, audio doesn't need visual. And visual doesn't necessarily need audio. And it's a small place where they intersect that's nice. And we haven't hit a lot of those yet. I think Billy Joel does good. I like Billy Joel's videos. I think they act more like a Cab Calloway soundy than the other things.
They're stories. That's what
they're stories. That's right. They're stories. And they used to have stories, the soundies in the 30s, which were, it was just a place, maybe a cool story about some place in Harlem or something. And then they just play a song. The song didn't have to have nothing to do with the place that they were in. The song stood by itself. The place stood by itself. And sometimes the song and the place intermingled. And that's nice. But don't force the music to be visually stimulating, or force the vision to be musically stimulating, unless that's a nice marriage.
Do you think that we've seen, because of the advent of music television, do you think that we've seen a lot of people become stars simply on their visual image? Do you think that music is sort of taking a second place in a lot of this?
Well, absolutely. Music doesn't take a second place, but it's like art doesn't take a second place to graphic and commercial art, you know, but it's there. I mean, but it doesn't take a second place. You just don't get paid as much. Time will tell, won't it? Time will tell.
Yeah.
See which people want to admit to what they did. We'll see.
What other American bands and artists do you guys consider real strong American rock and rollers that really stand?
There's a lot of people now.
Yeah.
I mean, from Bruce Springsteen to the Paladins in San Diego. I mean, it probably fills the spectrum, man. It's all over the country. When I was 15 years old, you couldn't find anybody that knew who Carl Perkins was in my high school, except for the Okies, who hated him because their dad had the record, right? And so now you go to Orange County, where all the rich people all moved away so that they didn't have to live next to the lower class people, and they're all in there playing their music like crazy, and their 15-year-old kids are spreading the word. It was great.
What do you think the future of rock and roll is? What do you think it's going to...
I think rock and roll's the best social, the greatest unifier of American culture and society is music. And it's the one that has fed most, cross-fertilized between the most. We've seen more influence between the races in music, and between the cultures, between the Mexican culture and the French Cajun culture and the black culture and the and South American culture. All of those things have gone on through music, and I think it's going to eventually lead to unifying us, which it already done. It's starting to unify the whole world. Music is without language. When you talk about the importance of words, you see, what does it mean when somebody in Hong Kong buys my record to what the word is? It doesn't matter. it's a different place. It's a much more fundamental communication. And it brings to light, one, you get people listening to the beautiful patterns of all of this music. How can you look at Louis Armstrong's beautiful pattern constructions and say that this thing is an animal? This is less than you. No matter what house you live in, it starts to show you that you're less than it may be. And it starts to say, well, maybe then I might as well be equal if I ain't as good. Since I ain't as good as him, let's be equal now.
What do you think?
We're on tape.
Okay.
Way to go, Phil.